Never invest in anything where you can only win in one way. Alrighty, we are cruising along. Episode 6 of the Main Street Patriot Podcast. I am your host, Jimmy Vreeland, owner of Vreeland Capital, and with me always is my producer Jake. Jake, how you doing today?
Good, man. How you doing?
I am excited. We are getting through these podcasts. If you're listening to episode 6, we would have already dropped the first 5 episodes.
That's right.
Hopefully, you guys enjoyed the first 5 episodes. Kind of got a crash course in what we're trying to do here. The initial pre-templated episodes, we have 20 to get through the whole concept of what Ranger Real Estate really is. But episode 6, so what we're going to be talking about is the 4 pillars for investing. Now, why is this important? Well, before I tell you why it's important, what I want you guys to go do is I want you to go to Facebook. Zuckerberg just announced that they're no longer censoring everything in Facebook, so you won't be censored. You know, I almost got so angry at Facebook, I almost completely, no more paying Zuckerberg for ads, no more any of that stuff. But
yeah,
I was just, I couldn't.
Well, I think they just appointed somebody to the liaison with the government who is non-fan of censorship or something.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Thank God for Elon Musk, subject of another podcast. But check out our free Facebook group, which is Ranger Real Estate, how to get wealthy on Main Street. Inside that group, we'll be having deals that are for sale. I know people are always interested in that. We're going to be having different investing concepts, different cool things we're seeing on the street as we go out to appointments. You know, it's just everything passive real estate. So go ahead and check that free Facebook group out.
We'll have a link in the show notes.
Sweet. And so, okay. The 4 pillars. So, Jake, why this is important is, I think we talked about it in probably my origin story episode, but before I understood the 4 pillars of investing, I was like an unguided missile.
Yeah.
And so I needed the frame of the 4 pillars to understand when to invest and why to invest. And so that's what we're going to be taking the audience through today.
So I'm actually curious at that point. So this is kind of a reboot from the cash flow tactics, rise up, live free. Then you described that as a machine gun of cool stuff.
Yeah.
Would you say that you guys talked about things that didn't follow the 4 pillars?
No, we kept pretty based in 4 pillars. So
okay.
There's 3 ways you can invest that have all the 4 pillars. And as you get wealthier, you can start taking pillars off the table that you need.
Yep.
But really the 4 things really, it's 2 things. It's a passive real estate portfolio and your own business. And so as far as wealth generating machines, and you can make an argument that high value cash flowing life insurance is the same thing.
Sure.
But kind of outside the scope of this of this podcast.
Sure. Yeah. This is really focused on real estate. That was one of your kind of efforts and focuses and doing the Main Street Patriot podcast. Yeah. So that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, nice. So you were the unguided missile, and the 4 pillars really helped you to kind of really focus your efforts in wealth creation.
And so here's my main problem. I don't have a problem with Wall Street investing, but Wall Street's awesome. It brings liquidity to the greatest economy on earth. The purpose of the trading floor on Wall Street is to bring liquidity to the market. It does a great job at doing that. I don't know if it does a phenomenal job of giving high income earners the best chance to retirement.
That's a great distinction.
Yeah. I mean, but I do get annoyed by all the people who are like, oh, Wall Street's a casino, get your money completely out of it, and making it almost like a moral crusade.
Oh, yeah.
When you're investing, there's no need to fire up that much emotional energy. And the reason the people on Instagram are doing it is to fire up emotional energy so that you invest in their alternative investment.
Right.
So,
Yeah, your strategy is different. I love the way you you put it, I think it was episode 3, the kind of whole do what they do, not what they say to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Do what they do. Yeah. Watch people's behavior. Like, don't.
Yeah.
You want to be a great investor? Watch people's behavior. What will people actually buy? I don't really care what people say.
Sure.
Like, let's watch behavior.
Yeah. So Wall Street is investing in Main Street.
Yeah. And so, cool. I want to get rich like a hedge fund. Well, why don't I look at what hedge funds are doing? Well, they have a base of capital that is trying to get is trying to institutionalize a non-institutional asset. So single-family real estate, the knock on it historically has been it's hard to institutionalize.
Right.
So that's why malls, which are now being all torn down,
right.
other commercial assets in multifamily has been more attractive to institutional buyers before 2020.
Right, right.
But with COVID, and I don't know exactly why, well, when interest rates went to zero, institutional buyers got interested in single family because they needed a place to deploy all that capital.
Right.
And so when I was growing up, like there wasn't Home Depot and Lowe's. This is my prediction of what's going to happen to single family real estate. There was Bob's hardware store. There was no national chain hardware stores.
Yep.
And so every little town had their own hardware store, right?
Right.
Those are all gone.
Yep. Totally conglomerated, you could say.
Home Depot and Lowe's have all of it.
Yeah, or even the little ones are all operating. There's obviously Ace. They essentially franchise it out, even when it's called somebody's such and such.
Yeah.
There's a couple others like that, Do It Right and what have you. Yep.
So I think we're in the same spot with single-family real estate. I think when I cash out and sell in 30 years, I'll be selling to an institutional buyer. I think it's going to be harder and harder for high-income earning non-institutional buyers to acquire property.
Yeah.
And so, that's why we're the Main Street Patriot.
Yeah, in the meantime, you and your team are helping people to get there first.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, whole point of the podcast, whole point of everything we're doing here. But, okay, so it's like, everybody wants to invest like Buffett. Everybody wants to do all that. But like, okay, so what are all these hedge funds doing? They're taking a tranche of their capital and they're taking it to single-family residential real estate in the United States.
Yep.
And so it never made a lot of sense to me that I would send my money to Wall Street when all they're trying to do is buy up Main Street.
Yep.
So it's just been like, why not cut out the middleman?
Cut out the middleman.
And so my knock on traditional financial planning is that you're playing checkers instead of chess. Like I love jujitsu, right?
Okay.
And the reason I love jujitsu is because there's so many different ways to win.
Oh.
Like you can be a big smash guy and you're just going to smash people.
Yep.
Or you can be a little squirrely guy who loves to be the ground game. But there's so many different ways to win in jiu-jitsu. It's just why I think it's infinitely interesting to people and why people do it.
Sure. Yeah. Doesn't get old.
Yeah. And so, but
that's like rugby for me. Rugby, I played rugby for 12 seasons, and it's constantly evolving game.
Yeah. So nobody likes to play a game you can only win one way, right?
Sure.
And when I look at Wall Street, you can only win one way.
Huh.
You buy an asset
at
X, and you sell it at Y.
Right. You got to wait for it to go up.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah, and most likely, if you look at the last 70 years, it'll go up. But you only win one way. Mm-hmm. And so it's boring. Like you like rugby. When I teach it on like a video, I like it. I like games. I compare it to football.
Okay. Yeah. Similar concept.
Like the forward pass in football is a somewhat modern invention.
Yeah.
When football was first invented, all you could do was smash heads and run the ball, right?
Right.
Very boring game.
Yep.
But now football, with the advent of the forward pass, the way you score in football is running, passing, special teams, and
kicking.
Turnover. Kicking.
Yeah.
So it's like the reason they changed football is because games that you only win in one way are boring. And so Wall Street, you can only win in one way. Buy low, sell high. Mm-hmm. I want to play a game where I can win 4 ways: appreciation, cash flow, the ability to use other people's money, and tax advantages.
Those are the 4 pillars.
Yes.
Awesome.
And so like one of my credences is never invest in anything where you can only win in one way.
Yeah.
And so let's just kind of run through it. We'll do a podcast episode on each of the individual pillars.
Yep. So Jimmy, those are the 4 pillars. How did you come to this conclusion or realization?
Well, remember in a previous episode, we talked about my investing phase where I was just looking for cash flow in all the wrong places.
Oh yeah,
and
right.
Just spraying and praying and spraying with all the money, right?
Yep.
And so what happened was, I was doing everything. I was investing in oil wells. I was trading options. I was doing multi-level marketing, which was my wife's least favorite.
Yeah.
And I was even selling stuff on eBay. But like I said in a previous episode, like I kept buying 2 houses a year. And so eventually one of my oil wells, did I tell this on the previous podcast when I got a letter from the SEC?
Oh, yes. Yep.
Yeah.
There was a scam or something.
Yeah, it turns out one of my oil wells was part of a Ponzi scheme. And so like that was rock bottom for me.
Yeah.
And so then I met with a mentor, told him what was going on, and he's like, "Hey dude, like why don't you he looked at everything I had and he's like, "Wow." He's like, "Oh, cool, a lot of activity. You definitely clearly an unguided missile." And so he's like, "But look at all these rentals over here that you have here." Because by that time I had piled up like 20 rentals.
Yeah.
And he's like, "You're getting some decent cash flow with this. Your balance sheet is ridiculous. Like, at this point, you're a millionaire because of this." And he's like, "What would just happen if you would just focus on real estate?"
Yeah.
And he's like, I was like, "I don't know, it'd be kind of boring." And he's like, "Yeah, but you'd win. What do you want to be more? Do you want to be excited or do you want to win?" I was like, "I want to win."
Yeah.
And I'm
What's
like,
more important to you? Not boring or winning?
which is, I think a lot of people struggle investing if they don't have that constant, and I struggle with this. If I don't have that constant endorphin, constant reinforcement, then I start squirreling and looking for other things. So that's why these 4 pillars are almost like blinders for a horse.
Yep.
And so first, then he asked me another question. He's like, "Do you even know why he goes, "Jimmy, why does real estate work?" And I was just like, because Kiyosaki said it would. And no, he's like, "Jimmy, they actually work because of the 4 pillars for investing." And then he took me through the 4 pillars.
Okay.
And so this was like probably 2016. And then after that, I just refused to even look at any investment that didn't have the 4 pillars.
Yeah.
And so then I was able to take all that unguided missile energy and channel it into a guided missile. And then that's what really kind of helped me take off for success. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then it's just like, cool, I don't invest in anything that doesn't have all the 4 pillars.
Yeah.
And so that's why I never got into crypto, because crypto, you only win in crypto when you sell it. There's no tax advantages. You can't use other people's money, and it doesn't cash flow. So that's why I've never, and I think crypto is great. That's the other thing. I think all these investments are great, but for me, and then I think for anybody trying to generate wealth, there's a launch phase.
Yep.
In the launch phase, you got to apply everything to 4 pillar investments. Mm-hmm. As you grow your wealth, as you get wealthier, and you don't need to create that high rate of return that we've talked about in previous episodes,
Right.
then cool, become a private lender. Private lender, you give up appreciation, you give up tax advantages. Mm-hmm. It's like, and so we'll do an episode on the wealth pyramid. As you climb the wealth pyramid, you can use less pillars.
Yep.
But I'm going to run through real quick, and each of these pillars will give their own episode.
Yep.
But I mean, appreciation, since the Battle of Midway, since 1942, the median home price in the United States doubles every 20 years. Even with the Great Recession, between 2000 and 2020, houses still doubled in price.
Yeah.
And here's another interesting thing where I ask people to consider real estate and appreciation is it's only been 7 years since 1941 where the median home price has gone down. And 5 of those years were during the Great Recession.
Yeah.
And a lot of people say what happened in 2008 was a real estate crash. I think it was a fraud and lending crash. Mm-hmm. People were lying, and that's why things got out of control.
Yeah.
So I still don't necessarily think of that as a real estate crash.
How much do local market conditions affect like if something will appreciate or not?
I mean, west of the Appalachians and west of the Rockies and east of the Appalachians, I don't think at all.
Okay.
I think you'll see great variability in California.
Yep.
And I think you'll see great variability on the coast where prices have just gotten nuts.
Yeah.
So where I invest is in Middle West markets, and because I describe people like, why the Middle West? And I was like, well, I describe St. Louis and the markets we invest in like my athletic career. Exceptionally mediocre.
Okay.
Like you never I was never going to get just completely trashed.
Yeah.
But I was also never going to make ESPN highlight reel.
Okay.
And so you don't want markets that appreciate in booms and crash in crashes.
Right.
Like even the minor real estate, I'm not going to call it a crash, but when the prices went down in 2023,
Yep.
St. Louis kept appreciating.
Right. So what I'm hearing is it says boring markets again.
Yeah.
Right. But it works. There's steady appreciation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're
can count
going
on
to keep pace
that.
with inflation. You're going to beat inflation. The cash flow gap's going to open up.
Yep.
And then, like, for people who want some, and I don't think risk reward is the right thing to look at, but like if you were like me and you want, you don't want to be bored, then I would do something in more of an active fashion. Or, people have made a ton of money speculating crypto.
Yeah.
Like, maybe I missed out on that one, but number one job as an investor is to develop your criteria and stick to it.
Yeah. Keep your eye on the ball.
Yeah.
Nice. So what's the next one?
So we've talked about this one ad nauseum already in the previous episodes, but cash flow. Like rent minus mortgage, minus insurance, minus utilities, that equals your cash flow. So do you think we need to go any deeper?
Yeah. Pretty straightforward.
And we did trash cash flow a little bit in the previous episodes, but the great thing about cash flow is once that cash flow gap opens up, you don't have to sell the asset to get a return on it. You can either take a line of credit against it
Sure.
with a cash out refi, or you can sell the house.
Yep.
There's very few other assets where you can still own the asset and get a return on it.
Yeah.
Like crypto's great, but you have to sell it. Mm-hmm. And so everybody's so nervous to sell their crypto because it's like, oh, how do I do it again?
Sure.
And so great thing about cash flow is you don't have to sell the asset.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And then my favorite episode that we will do on the 4 pillars is leverage and getting people comfortable with using debt and showing people how debt amplifies return. And at the bottom line, I don't think the other problem I have with traditional financial planning and real estate, I don't think you can really get wealthy using your own money after taxes. You need to find some investment vehicle that's tax advantages and you can use other people's money.
Yeah.
And, I could never go into a bank with my 401k and say, hey, can you lend me off my 401k?
Yeah.
But I can always take a title to a house, say, hey, can I get some cash for this? And a banker will always give it to you.
Yeah. Can I ask you a question since you're a Bible believing man?
Yes.
Yeah. How do you distinguish between like honest investment, which I would put like lending in that category, and like what the Bible says against like lend not like to usury?
Well, I mean, I think if you really, I've reread the Bible verses on this, and I've had, I've listened to different commentaries, and it really means don't lend at usury rates.
Right.
And don't lend to people who can't pay you back.
Right. So kind of responsible lending.
Yeah. I mean, there's some people who you shouldn't lend to.
Uh-huh.
That's one, like people can't pay you back. I wouldn't lend to them.
Right. And if the sort of percentage at which you're willing to take on that risk of lending to them is so high that they'll never be able to get out from underneath that, that's where you're sort of being immoral in that action.
Yeah. It's kind of, there's like I had a big libertarian stage where I was just like, the market will set all morality. I don't believe that anymore.
Yeah.
Now I think you can skew the other way is because in the Middle Ages, all lending was outlawed. And I definitely think that slowed down the Western developing world.
Sure. Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah. So there's definitely a moral way to take debt and lend to other people.
Yeah. That makes total sense. there's sort of a middle ground
Like, is it
in terms of interest rate that where it makes sense, and you have to like take the particular case of the person and can they
Yeah,
probably
it's the
pay this
interest rate
back?
and the functionality of the person.
Yep.
Like, are they able to handle? Because, like, I borrowed to get started. I borrowed $5 million in private money,
Okay.
and so I was able to pay it back. But this was also people's retirement money. Mm-hmm. This is they self-direct. A lot of my lenders self-directed their IRA, and then they self-directed their retirement IRA, and then sent it to me because they felt it was a safer, higher return.
Sure. But in doing so, you engineered a win-win, which is the whole point of like, hey, by leveraging this other people's money, you can create a scenario where it's win-win. You're putting money to use, and getting these higher return on investment that otherwise is possible just using your own money because you're willing to put it to active use.
Yeah, and as you get older and you're going to become less dynamic or less productive, like eventually age will hit you.
Yep.
But now you've spent all this time developing, becoming productive, and you have these assets and this capital. Eventually, the only thing you can do is lend out. Mm-hmm. And so to say, hey, lending's off the table, I think would be disastrous.
Yeah.
To people's retirement, and old people lend to young people. Young people have time and energy, but no cash. So it's a perfect trade.
Yeah. Win-win. I like it.
And so then we've also talked about it. Leverage amplifies returns. That's the main reason you use it. And your number one destroyer of wealth is going to be taxes. Like, the whole reason I really got into real estate was a tax revolt.
Yep.
Like, to build your wealth, you have to mitigate your tax burden. If your investment strategy does not mitigate your tax burden, I think you're being a poor steward. And so in the taxes episode, we'll talk about how different Supreme Court justices says it's an American right to pay your least amount of taxes
I love that. I'm excited for that one.
possible.
Yeah. Nice.
And then
that's the fourth pillar, tax benefits, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if we just said earlier, do as people do, not as they say. But if you look at the wealthy, what they do is they have a bunch of assets, and they're spending cash. They take lines of credit off their assets. Mm-hmm. And do you want to know why?
Yeah.
Because they borrow at 0% tax.
Oh. Okay.
I mean, that's a big revelation, is that wealthy people spending money comes from their lines of credit. Mm-hmm. And they take that cash on because it's lower in taxes, or it's zero tax. Mm-hmm. When you borrow money, they don't tax you.
How much does somebody have to understand? Because the tax code is pretty complicated.
Yeah.
How much does somebody have to understand to start really taking advantage of their tax benefits?
I think they could watch a couple teaser videos from me.
Yeah.
And then talk to their tax professional, and I think they're good to go.
Right. And if they're investing in a specific asset like real estate, it's super easy to actually take advantage of those benefits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's incredibly easy.
Yeah. Cool.
But like, this is where I'm very cautious, and anytime I talk about taxes, I'm like, hey, here's where my line ends.
Yeah.
I'm basically like, here's a cool strategy you can implement. I won't implement it for you. Can't implement it for you. Talk to a tax professional. And inside the program, we hook people up with tax professionals.
Right. That's a great benefit of the program.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And so, like, I'm going to run through some numbers real quick on why tax and leverage have to be combined. So let's say you want to buy a $100,000 house, and let's say you want to buy it from cash. How much do you want to buy it cash? How much do you have to actually earn to then buy that house? To buy a $100,000 house cash, you really need to earn 135. And so it's like, that's why, buying assets with your own after-tax cash, it just doesn't work.
Yep.
So now let's say you want to use leverage and buy a $100,000 house with other people's money. So you're going to need a 20% down payment. How much do you have to actually earn? $27,000. So
that's a lot.
$7,000 would go to your taxes. 20 grand's left to invest.
Yep.
So unless you're going to use leverage, and like I said, you got to buy 5 houses and to really make it interesting. But if you're going to wait and use your own cash, it's not efficient. It's not an efficient use of cash. And so I personally believe it's like a mission impossible to try to get wealthy without other people's money and tax advantages. Mm-hmm. And then the interesting part about 4 pillars and winning in 4 ways is the cumulative return of how your return when you add up all the 4 pillars. Because if you just look at cash flow, it's not an interesting investment. I don't know. I don't know if I would do it if you only won in real estate and cash flow.
Sure.
So
Takes a while.
yeah, here's your average cumulative return for an asset. So appreciation, real estate doubles in price every 20 years. So that means an average of 5% return. But if you've used leverage, that's a 25% return annually. Not once, but annually, like slow and steady. Next is cash flow part 2. Like I say, if you're going to buy a house, just make sure you're cash flow positive. So year 1, look for a 5 to 8% cash flow. So cool. We'll go in the low numbers. Boom. Now we're up to 20. We're up to 30% return on it. Where else are you going to get a 30% return on an asset?
Not a reliable one anywhere I can think of.
Yeah. Next, your tenant's going to be paying your mortgage down. That's another 5% a year. And then taxes, you can expect a 4% savings a year. Now, there's advanced strategies where you can push those savings forward, but that's how you get to close to a 40% cumulative return on these assets per year. That's why it's simple and kind of easy. It's like, this is why it works.
Right.
And I just don't know that a lot of people know that that's how it works. And these 30-year fixed mortgages that the government backs for you, it's the only subsidy you're going to get as a middle-class American. So that's what I got on the 4 pillars, Jake. What did I miss? What questions could I have answered?
No, I think you nailed it all. I know there's going to be an episode on each one of these in particular, so we're going to kind of go deep for everybody there.
Yeah.
What are we talking about next time?
So next time, what is up is we are going to go through my favorite pillar, inflation. We're going to do a little history lesson. This is something I really enjoy getting into. I really got fired up about real estate once I understood inflation. Mm-hmm. This is back in 2005 when inflation was somewhat tamed.
Oh, sure.
Now that we're in a hyperinflation environment, very interesting. And we're going to talk about how the greatest threat to your wealth is taxes. The probably next is inflation, which you can make an argument that inflation is a silent tax. But
ooh, hot take. All right.
Yeah.
I'm excited for that, Jimmy. That's awesome.
That's for the next episode. So
nice.
Don't remember if you want, or do remember.
Don't forget.
Yeah, don't forget. If you want to get involved with Ranger Real Estate or Vreeland Capital, there's a link in the show notes if you want to hop on a call with a team member of mine, see if we can start working together. And if you're getting value out of the podcast, please like, share, and subscribe, and leave us a comment. Help us manipulate the algorithms.
There you go. See you next time.
All right, see you guys. So if you like what you heard today and you want to learn more, sign up for a discovery call with one of the Vreeland Capital success coaches at jimmyvreeland.com.